Hello, everybody, and welcome to another AzureWell podcast. My name is HR Payne. I'm going to be hosting today, and joining me is, of course, Dr. Alphonzo Monzo, biblical naturopath and author of The Alphonzo Body. Hello, Dr. Monzo. How you doing?
Great. And yourself?
Good to see you again today here, sir. So we're going to be exploring one of our most valuable assets that we have here, and that's our brain, right? And I think a lot of people think that memory simply declines with age, right? It's a consequence of aging. But I don't know if that's necessarily scientifically true, because every time we're thinking, every time we're learning something new, we're actually creating new synapses in the brain constantly, right? So science is actually beginning to show us that our brain is actually very adaptable throughout our life, and so it's not like this machine that wears out, right?
Yeah.
I would like to more so. It's like a living garden that really, I think, responds to how you take care of it, how you nurture it. Would you say that that's true?
Yeah. It's kind of the issue we have across the board with kind of the allopathic model that we have been ingrained in as we have moved away from nature. It's this weird concept that, when you're getting older, everything's going to fall apart and there's nothing you can do about it. It's like, that's not really the whole story.
Well, today you're going to be going through with us. You've developed these kind of 8 pillars, these practical strategies I've learned that we can implement into our own lives, our family lives. But today, I think that you're going to see that it's beyond nutrition. It's about social connection. It's about prayer. It's certainly there's certain targeted herbs that you can work with, but we're going to be going over today more so practical ways to nourish the mind and sharpen your memory. So as we go on with our life, we can have that cognitive vitality. So there is good news to all this. It's not, as we age, we lose our minds, we lose our brains, but our brains are actually designed to grow and adapt and respond to the choices that we're making every day, the new things that we're learning every day. So I'm super excited to get into this one and just really detail out for people what they can do to continue to strengthen their mind, strengthen their brain, grow those, as long as we have the right nurturing components, right? The right nourishment for the brain, we can actually continue to develop the brain. So let's go ahead and get started today. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, and repair the brain, right? The brain can repair, and maybe that's something that people are not aware of because we've been so conditioned and the body doesn't really heal itself. And we know on a superficial level, you get a cut, you heal, but then we're told that that's only true about cuts and the rest of the body can't heal. Well, that's not true. The body's always trying to heal. The body can heal. So if we get the slide up, you're going to see kind of a clever name here. I call it use it, nourish it, keep it. So it's kind of a play off of the whole, use it or lose it concept. So as HR said, we're going to look at 8 key principles. But first, brain function and memory support. You need to use it, you need to nourish it, then you can keep it. So what we're going to look at is how to use it and how to nourish it. And that gets broke down then into these 8 key principles. And you can see they're nice and color-coded for you for the brain function and the brain memory and everything. It makes it a little bit easier to read. You can see the first 4 all have to do with how you use your mind, your brain. And so that covers movement and exercise, mindfulness and meditation, cognitive training, and then social connections. And then 5 through 8 are kind of more of how you're nourishing the brain. Well, it needs rest, it needs sleep and recovery, it needs nutrition and hydration. There are herbs and adaptogens, and then there's I call this one light in nature. Basically, the concept of getting outside and enjoying the cycles of life and the nature that's so healthy or so good for the body and the brain included. So we're going to break each one of these down, and then we're going to get into what nutrients AzureWell has that you could use. Now, Azure has all kinds of different whole food supplements and herbs and adaptogens. So as we're going through this, you're kind of getting an idea. So the first one is movement. Well, movement is key to life. When we stop moving, we die. We were just joking because I just saw a thing about it said Clint Eastwood just decided to retire, and I thought thought he was already retired, but I guess he's been behind the scenes directing movies, and you can see he's pretty high up there in age now, and I think a lot of that has to do with he's stayed busy. He has been moving. He's been keeping his brain working. I mean, directing a movie and directing films, that's you have to use your mind. And so it's just this concept that there's movement. And this even comes back to the biblical example that the first thing we see in Genesis is the Spirit of the Most High, the Spirit of God, is hovering and moving over the waters, vibrating over the waters. And then he speaks and creates everything. So we see the first principle in nature and in creation is movement. Things have to be moving. And so we need to keep the body moving and the brain moving. And the way we can do that, I have some scientific facts on here that I found. And one is aerobic exercise boosts BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That's interesting. So aerobic exercise boosts that. Zone 2 cardio, which is like brisk walking, jogging, cycling, grows the hippocampus. So obviously, if you're going to be doing cardio, you're going to be moving, which is going to pump circulation. You're going to get the lymph system moving, and all those things are going to equal better blood flow and circulation and detoxification of the brain. So you're going to be able to nourish the brain by bringing blood supply to the brain to deliver nutrients and to help detox. Movement Tai Chi type exercises reduce cortisol and enhance focus. And even daily walking improves recall memory. Isn't that interesting? So then we have some examples. Well, there's aerobic exercises, there's Tai Chi, there's yoga, there's dancing, there's cardio. These are just some examples. Doesn't mean you have to do them all. Doesn't mean you have to like them all. But, if you pick something on this list, even dancing, think about how great dancing is when we look at these keys. So here are some keys to take away from this. In addition to the idea of moving your body and improve circulation, that would be the cardio aspect. But here are two other aspects that people don't often think about with exercise. Everyone thinks about moving and circulation, but the combining of breath work, so breathing, balance, and mindful movements. So we're talking about slow, deliberate sequences that demand focus. So we're making a mind-body connection. We're not just doing these random movements and you're just kind of, you're actually thinking and focused on very slow movements where you have to be focused, your brain's working, you have to be concentrating on your breath and your balance and your movement. And that's why dancing is actually a great one. Think about how many functions of the brain you're using when you're dancing. You have to have the right balance of slow or speed, the sequences, the movements. So there's a lot of brain-body connections being made there, where the brain isn't just parked. It's not just not being mindful, but the brain is actually participating in controlling these movements and reactions. So that's getting the brain moving as well as the body moving. And of course, that's going to help with using your body, using your mind, and then, you don't lose it because you're practicing. Anything else you want to add on movement before we move on to mindfulness and meditation?
No, let's continue.
All right. So next one's meditation or mindfulness. So daily meditation thickens the prefrontal cortex. Okay, so this is important. Prefrontal cortex is up here. So that is the part of the brain that allows us to be in the now, to be focused. Basically, the key word you want to think of is functional. So when we're in prefrontal cortex, we're functional. We're getting things done, we're focused, we're able to accomplish things. A lot of times with stress, what happens is we either move into the limbic system of the brain or the midbrain, and that's where we're kind of getting stuck on processing. We're not really functional. We might get stuck in a freeze response or a fight response or a flee or fawning. But usually when we're getting stuck in those areas, you're not actually functional. And maybe you're stuck in the past or you're stuck somewhere. You're not. So being able to make sure we're getting to our prefrontal cortex means we're actually functional and we're focused and we're kind of in the now. So another thing that it does is it lowers cortisol, which erodes the hippocampal neurons. Breath awareness anchors present moment present moment focus. So again, this concept of being in the present and not in the past, not in the future, that means we're in that prefrontal cortex again, where we can actually function. So if you ever get stuck somewhere where you're sitting there and 15 minutes goes by and you realize I didn't get anything done in the last 15 minutes, what am I doing? You're kind of just like stuck or zoned out. A lot of that could be from trauma or could just be from not being mindful. That the body scan practices improve interoception awareness. So we're going to explain that here in a minute. But here are some examples. You could be meditating on scripture. There's prayer and listening to God. There's focused attention on something. So maybe it's studying a new subject or reading a book. So, you could be reading a book and stop and meditate and think about what you just read. Body scan meditation. So all these have these keys to them. And that is you're concentrating on a single subject. It could be on the Bible, it could be on a book, it could be on your body, but your concentration is on a single object, like your breath, scripture, area of the body. And then what you're doing is you're observing your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations without judgment. All right. This is not where we're going to judge what we're observing. We're just observing. We're taking note of it. And then when you're done taking note of it, then you can form your conclusion and make your decisions. What did you feel? What were those sensations? What were those thoughts? Were they good? Were they bad? Were they indifferent? And that tells you a lot about your body, right? So it's really interesting. Our body and our mind is oftentimes trying to tell us things. But in our society, sometimes meditation gets a bad idea. We think of meditation as being maybe some weird new age practice or something. It doesn't have to be. It's not that kind of thing. And so we oftentimes don't practice these things. Like, oh, I'm not going to focus on my feelings and my thoughts and my sensations and stuff. That's kind of weird and that's kind of woo-woo, and I'm not going to do that. Well, the problem is that a lot of times your body is giving you a message. And if we don't heed those messages, eventually we burn out and we crash and we go, well, how did I get here? And it's like, well, your body was actually trying to give you signals. And a lot of times we need to practice this type of meditation and mindfulness so we can actually learn to observe and receive the messages our bodies are doing or giving. And this is a way you can do it. By practicing this, it becomes almost like a second nature almost. If you don't ever practice it, you don't even know you can do it. And we see that a lot. We, as I think all naturopathic vitalists, know that we often see, I would say a large majority of our clients or patients come in and they are really completely out of touch with their body. They really don't know how to read their body or know what their body's telling them. And through these types of practices, you can learn a lot about yourself and what your body's telling you. Maybe you're not feeling well and your body is saying, you know what? I don't know if I really want to eat. You're saying, I don't really feel, you stop and you really think about this. I don't really feel hungry. Maybe I just shouldn't eat. Is there wisdom in that? Well, actually, there is, because the body only has so much energy. And one of the highest resources of energy is digestion. So it's an old common practice that if you're not feeling well and your body's starting to fight off something, or it needs a detox or something, sometimes the best thing to do is to limit your food intake and eat smaller meals, or maybe broths, something where all your energy is not being used for the digestive process, but the energy then can be used for the healing process. Some people call this a law of diminishing return, or the law of conservation of energy. You only have so much, and so there are certain times when you might want to do that. And you might be able to find that out just by observing what feelings and sensations your body is giving you. Maybe your body is saying, you have a pain or you're hurt somewhere, and your body is saying, I want heat, I want cold. A lot of times the body is trying to tell you, but we just don't do a very good job of listening to it. And then we self-medicate, or we go to the allopath and they suppress what your body is telling you. And then you end up with a bigger problem. So meditation could be a very big thing here. It's really a way of listening to your body. And the more you do that, the more the brain is functioning and firing. And when it fires, it wires, and you can make new brain cells and or links, and that's how you can keep the mind younger.
Dr. Monzo, I've read a lot of research that has shown that mindfulness, meditation, prayer, focus can reduce certain activities in the brain that regulate the brain's fear and stress center, right? So quite literally lowering cortisol levels, strengthening those neural connections that you're talking about. The prefrontal cortex, it's the prefrontal cortex that is responsible for like attention and emotional regulation. What if someone is struggling with anxiety, racing thoughts, that feeling of just being constantly on the edge? I mean, that's most of America today, right?
Yeah.
What is more of a practical exercise that they can participate in when we say meditation?
Yes.
What is a practical exercise that they can take home with them and just start today? I mean, is it as simple as, are we just closing our eyes and trying to think about nothing when our mind is racing? It becomes very difficult for some, right? So what can we do to slow that down?
So I'll give you two examples. So the first one would be for more people who are maybe religious, who believe in Bible or scripture. One thing you can simply do is go to like the Psalms. There's great ones like Psalms 23 and other things, and you can just read the Psalms and then focus on what it's saying. That's one way. Another way would be more of the body scan, which is, let's say you're feeling anxiety or stress, or maybe you have a pain in your body somewhere. We would focus on that sensation. Maybe you close your eyes, you focus on it, and then you're just observing, what do you feel? What thoughts come to your mind? What feelings come to your mind? What sensations come? And what's interesting, and you can pray throughout that time. And what's interesting a lot of times is, even if we don't have the answer, a lot of times just by doing that, that's when God speaks to us. And a lot of times we don't really understand that, because we think we're going to hear this voice from heaven or not. But a lot of times it's just our own thoughts. It sounds like our own thoughts. And all of a sudden, an idea will come to your mind, and you're thinking, oh, you know what? I think X, Y, and Z happened today, and that's causing me anxiety. And it's like, well, maybe that wasn't your own thoughts at all. Maybe that was just God giving you some insight. And so now all of a sudden you just identified, oh, there is a stressor in my life. It's causing this issue. Maybe it needs to be addressed. And that's how we can get to those conclusions. If we just go, we just ignore it. And then, you have the same stress the next day and the next day, and it's creating all this anxiety, and you're trying to figure out, why am I so wound up? So those are two simple ways of kind of doing that. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to empty your mind completely. It just means you're trying to focus on something other than the racing thoughts in your head. So maybe you take your focus and you put it on an area of your body. Maybe you read a scripture and you're putting your focus on that. So it's trying to get that brain to shift. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
All right, next one is cognitive training. So this is obviously using your brain and doing things to train the brain. The memory palace, that's an interesting one. The method of loci, so that's the short for location. So what you're doing is you're mentally navigating a familiar location, like your home or a commute route that you take every day. And then you place items. So you have a bunch of different items, and you place each item that you want to remember in a vivid spot along the way. And to recall, you mentally walk through the route and you pick up each item. Really fascinating. We used to use well, sometimes we still do. There's an interesting device called a voice spile, and it does like an evaluation of the different musical notes in your voice. And what you do is you have the person answer 3 questions. And one of the questions is basically you have the person describe themselves walking through their house with as much description as they can. So, they would be like, when I come to the door, it's a blue door, you walk to the door, you go straight, there's a hallway, on your left is this and this, and you have them actually explain in detail the environment in their head. And then the device picks up the musical notes in your voice. And it's a really interesting evaluation, because the musical notes are then overlapped with the different systems of the body based on frequency. And you can learn a lot of stuff about your body. But you can see they have you do this memory palace kind of technique, because it gets your brain firing in different places, so that when it's picking up the different musical notes, we're getting a full picture about the body. Spaced repetition beats massed study for retention. That's an interesting one. I really never had that problem. This is the idea of cramming. So instead of cramming everything the night before, you have intervals of repetitive training, and you space out those intervals longer and longer when you have successful recall. So let's say you're going through a list, maybe it's a list of 12 things every day, and then maybe once a week, or 2 or 3 times a week, and then once a week, and then maybe you get to once every 2 weeks, and then once a month. Now, when you get to a point, let's say you're doing it once a month now. When you get to once a month, if you can't remember the 12 things on the list, maybe you can only remember 10, you've gone too long between the intervals for the repetition for it to really sink in. And I didn't really necessarily have a problem with this in college. I know a lot of kids did. It was not uncommon to find students who would wait for the last moment and then try to cram for the test the next day. I tried to prevent that. So I kind of had my own repetition that I did in college. What I did is I would buy one of those big calendars. It's a desktop calendar with the big boxes in it. And then when I would get the syllabus from each class from the first week of college, you would go through the syllabus, and usually they would have all your assignments and the due dates. And I would write the due dates on the calendar, and then I would go 1 week in advance and write it down again. And kind of like that was my deadline. That way I was getting everything done a week before, and then I had a whole week leverage there that, if I didn't get it done, it doesn't matter. That way I wasn't waiting for the last minute, especially if you had a paper, if you had a 20-page paper you had to write, you're not, oh no, it's due tomorrow. It's like you're going to be up all night. But that's a good way to use the repetition and just using your mind to kind of plan things out. Learning a new language or an instrument, gray matter, isn't that interesting? Yeah. Novelty seeking wires neural pathways. Now, when it comes to novelty seeking, there's good and bad things about that. And that's kind of like looking for new, intense, or complex, or unique experiences. The good thing about that is it can drive creativity and learning and adaptability. The only downside to it is you don't want to get to the point where it becomes like an addiction, where the boredom and distraction sets in normal life, and where you're like always seeking for the next thrill. Because it does help with dopamine, but you don't want it to become like an addiction where you're always seeking for this new dopamine release. So novelty seeking is good once in a while. It's not something you want to become addicted to. Like, I'm going to go find the next one. What's the highest building I can jump off tomorrow? It's like, don't want to take it too far. But every once in a while, going on a new vacation, going to learn a new task, new skill, maybe like it says, you want to learn a new language, you want to learn a new instrument, maybe a new sport. You just don't want that to become a bad habit or addiction where you're always looking for that dopamine release. So here are examples of cognitive training: the memory palace, the repetition, learning, games, neurofeedback. We love the NeuroOptimal 3.0. That's what I use. I love that one because it's more of a naturopathic concept in where it does not force the brain. It allows the brain to make its own decisions to correct itself. So the body's own innate wisdom is making the corrections instead of a neurofeedback device where you're pushing or pulling the brain in a specific direction that you think it needs to go. It's a lot better just to let the brain make its own choices. And that's what NeuroOptimal 3.0 does. But neurofeedback is a type of training for the brain. It's kind of like going to the gym for the brain. And it allows the brain to see itself and see where the neural pathways aren't right and make new ones. So the key to this one is use it or lose it. We're using the brain so it stays sharp and makes those new connections and repairs. And that's what we want to do. Anything with cognitive training there?
Yeah, I have a question here, Dr. Monzo. I just have to ask because we are, I think we all experience in this time and age where we are walking into a room and we forgot why we walked into a room, and now we're off doing something in this direction, and then before you know it, we're going in that direction. We're in an age of constant scrolling and short attention spans. Do you think we're unintentionally training our brains in the wrong direction by doing this?
I think so. I think just the simple fact of, I'm thinking if we just get used to having short lists in our head, here's a list of things I need to do. You're using your mind, you have to remember it, and you get the list done. Now we have a whole list on our phone that tells you all the things that you have to get done. And it's like, well, now you're not actually using your brain, you're just going to the list. I know this is even another example that was a big problem probably in my generation, and the teachers were always trying to break the habit, is with math, right? The calculators were out. And what happened is people started getting dependent on using the calculator instead of learning their mathematical tables. So now instead of doing the memory and learning, now all of a sudden you're relying on a device. And then what happens? Sooner or later, you start finding out people can't add, people can't subtract, because they're not used to doing that type of thought or logic in their brain. I don't know if this really applies or not, but another one that was a big thing during my time was there was a short time period in where sight reading became the big thing. And they stopped teaching phonics for just a short while. And so that didn't really work. But it was just weird that this concept of sight reading was this idea that you just memorize all the words and, you didn't really have to sound them out. But then, of course, that doesn't even work for my name. You can't even sound out Alphonzo with a PH. It's like, well, you said sound it out, but you didn't teach me phonics. So, it doesn't really work. I don't know if that's really related to the memory part, but it's just an example that we are over-reliant on technology now, and we're letting the technology doing the thinking for us. And that really makes me wonder what's going to really happen and how is all this stuff going to play out with AI.
Oh, yeah.
Because now we have AI is doing a lot for us, which means we're doing a lot less on our own. We're having to do less thinking. And obviously, we're never going to keep up with it as far as processing. AI is always going to be able to process information way faster than we can. But if we don't practice it, we lose it. So
Yeah.
the problem with modern technology is becoming dependent on it and overusing it to the point where we're not using our own mind anymore. And then it just starts fading away. So,
I mean, how often do you see young children that 3 years of age, they're literally learning on these iPads, or they're immediately put in front of a computer at a young age to teach them. And I think what it's important, especially, I have to just say, especially for children whose brains are evolving. The human brain evolved, it really is evolved to process information from a real world environments, right? Involving 3-dimensional movement, natural light, social interaction, right? Depth perception. This is what's critical to that sensory feedback. And what I'm really concerned about is this modern animated content that presents rapid scene changes, right? Exaggerated colors, especially with AI, unrealistic physics, that constant animated discovery in the brain, and that's what's developing the new synapses, is something that's not real. And what really concerns me is the type of pathways that are being developed, especially in children, versus the real life experiences, right? And I think that the studies are just coming out now, that this excessive exposure to these fast-paced animated entertainment, I mean, from movies to the iPads, actually impair that executive function, right? That attention, that working memory, that self-regulation in children. So what's more important than ever is put what's natural in front of them.
I think that's a big key, that this is becoming another step away from nature. So, and it just makes me think of some of our vital principles. So in naturopathic vitalism, one of the things we say a lot is the fact that these principles we have that are found in nature are self-evident. Well, if we have these systems now that are showing us this artificial reality, it's like people aren't even grounded in what are self-evident anymore in nature. And it's like, oh, you mean if I jump off the building, I'm going to splat? It's like, what? So it's like, how much are we messing with the self-evidence of nature and creating a really big problem where people are living in a reality that's not real? That's a major downfall for what we're trying to bring back. We're trying to bring back the natural principles. But you just said another one, which was social connection. So that's next on our slides here. The next thing is social connection. This is still using it, but it's the idea of making social connections. Strong social bonds are among the strongest predictors of cognitive longevity. Isn't that interesting? We'll unpack that in a minute. Conversation activates multiple brain regions simultaneously. Loneliness is linked to accelerated cognitive decline. Volunteering and mentoring boosts purpose and recall. So, obviously, when you think about it in social settings, you're going to learn how to make relationships. You're going to have conversations. And as you have these conversations, think about the activity that's occurring in the brain, right? You're requiring the brain to work and have conversation. And maybe, I wouldn't say like arguments, like we're like arguing, but disagreements and challenges. You think this way, I think this way. Okay, it's kind of the whole idea of iron sharpening iron, where you're giving your opinion, I'm giving my opinion. It both makes us think. We both stop and go, huh, yeah, you know. If you have nothing to bounce off to someone, you don't know when you're right. You don't know when you're wrong. You're just doing what you do. And of course, there's all this other evidence about the loneliness and the lack of social connection and how the brain declines.
Yep.
So the simple example is just get social. Now, if you have issues with being able to get social, that might be a indication of unprocessed trauma. Because a lot of times when there's trauma in relationships, one of our key responses is to withdraw and isolate. And we have to work through those processes because withdrawing and isolating does not help you or anybody else. So you can work through that process. And that brings a question up. Why do I withdraw? Why do I isolate? What's the trauma behind that? What do I need to work on? Social connections. So obviously trigger dopamine, lower cortisol, the iron sharpening iron. So this is where, maybe we need to get into some type of social group. There's a lot of groups that you can go out and join, and it could really be anything. A new learning club or some activity you like, or walking, hiking, whatever. You can find all kinds of different social clubs if you don't have people around you, and learn to make new friends. And that allows you to get into these conversations where you can start using the mind more and challenge each other and grow that way. So, like I said, you get to use it or you lose it. Next, I think we move into the nourishing part. So, a topic we've mentioned a lot: sleep and recovery, rest. Deep sleep consolidates declarative memories. Isn't that interesting? REM sleep processes emotional and associated memories. That's an interesting thing. So when we're talking about, I think everyone has some form of emotional stress or trauma. Isn't it interesting just that REM sleep helps you process through that and process those memories? The lymphatic system helps clear amyloid during sleep. Isn't that interesting? Well, it is part of the lymph system related to the nervous system and the brain. So that's going to help clear out the toxins, probably not just amyloid, but toxins in general out of the brain. We don't want toxins building up there. The body was designed to heal and to detox and pull that stuff out. And so that is interesting that system actually works during sleep, which is a really fascinating thing, because typically it's very connected to the lymphatic system, but usually with the lymphatic system, you have to be moving, but this one is a little bit different. Consistent bedtime anchors circadian rhythms. So there's a couple big things we're going to talk about here under the keys. For the examples, it's obvious: sleep, rest, recovery. So just having that time to take a time out, and of course, obviously getting the proper sleep. So the keys are deep sleep, consistent bedtimes, and the length of sleep are important, right? So we usually say 7 to 8 hours. You want that consistent bedtime. You want to be able to get into that deep sleep, which means number 2, having a good setting. So do we have the proper lighting? Is the room dark? Maybe you need the dark blocking blinds. Hopefully you're sleeping at night, so it's dark, but with all the modern technology, sometimes even at night, there's lights outside, and we don't really have dark. Like, I remember when I was a kid being able to go outside in our neighborhood and lay in the grass and see all the stars. And now, if I go to those same places, my parents still have their house, you don't see much because there's lights from the city and it lights up the whole sky now, and it's like you really don't see a lot of the stars like you used to. So having something to block out that light from your bedroom where you're going to be sleeping, big deal. A quiet environment. And there's other things you can do for both of these. You can get a sleep mask. You can get earplugs or something to block out the noise if you're in a really noisy area. But there are methods to make the setting better. And then, of course, a really big one a lot of people don't think about is an environment free from EMFs and RFs. So not sleeping on top of your router or your modem, not having your phone next to your bed. You know, some people even buy tri-field meters. It's a little meter that can measure EMFs, and you can go around your room. Especially, I like having one when I travel, because when you get to different hotels and different places, you don't know what the EMFs are going to be, and you can kind of go around. It's a little device that fits in your hand. You can go around and you can see how high the electrical settings are from the wiring or whatever is in the room. And then if you have to, you can move things around. So that brings in the idea of grounding as well. Maybe having grounding sheet or a grounding pad. Now, you have to make sure you get good ones. You always need to check your outlets. Yeah, they have devices like this. This is a circuit checker, and you know me in my electrical engineer days. This is 2 years electrical engineering. This is a circuit checker, and this is one of the most important things you're going to want to do if you want to get grounding mat or grounding sheets. You plug this in, and you see the little round one down here. That's your ground on an outlet. Yeah, your positive, negative, and then your ground is the round one. Usually, the grounding sheet only goes into the round one. But what people don't think is they assume that the ground on your outlet is right, or that the wiring in your house is right. And I can tell you, with the level of work these days, circuits aren't always right. Actually, I just rewired a circuit in my garage because we had an outdoor refrigerator and it kept going out. And we have these new fancy outlets with the, what's that called? The IG protection thing. And sure enough, I had to take that outlet off and put a new one in. And when I started putting the cords back in, you could see the cord when it fits into a circuit like that, it should go all the way into the insulation. But it wasn't. Some of the cord was sticking out. And I'm like, well, that's not good, because then if you get moisture in there and stuff, you can start getting shorts and stuff. So I had to cut off some of the wires to get it so that the insulation went all the way into the actual circuit, so none of the raw wire was exposed. And so I can tell you, work these days aren't always done correctly. So you always want to test. And this has different lighting systems in here. It's usually the first two. Well, if you're looking at it, I think you look at it this way. These two orange ones should light up if it's a proper circuit. If it's an improper circuit, you're going to get something else. If you get nothing lights up, that's like a really hot circuit. But you're going to get different patterns on here if the circuit's not right. And that's really important, because you don't want to be plugging into live power thinking you're grounding. And so the ground to your outlet is supposed to be a cord or a wire that goes to the ground into the actual earth. And so when you plug into just that one, you're actually plugged into the actual earth. So that's the first thing you would really want to do if you get a good grounding mat. What's that company? It's like Locosana, I think, is a really good company. I like how they build theirs, because one of the other things I always recommend, and they kind of build this into theirs, is with the grounding mats, they're usually using some type of metallic fiber. It's best not to be sleeping directly on metallic fibers. So I recommend putting your grounding sheet or grounding pad down, and then nice organic cotton or some type of natural fiber, linen, whatever, on top of it, and then lay on it. You're still going to get the effects of the grounding. I think they build that into theirs because they realize you don't want to be really laying directly on metal. That causes a lot of interference with your own electrical systems and electrostatic issues and stuff like that. So there's a proper way to do that. But that's another way to get in your bed grounded, and that will help you with the EMFs in the room and really helps just relax the body so you can sleep better. All right. I think that's it for the sleep one, unless HR has anything else he wants to add on sleep and rest.
I think that here sleep is sacred. I think this is so important. It's one of the key elements that you can incorporate into your health journey easily, sometimes easily. And let's talk about that for a second, because sleep is not passive rest. It's probably it's probably one of the most active periods of actual brain maintenance.
Yeah.
So it's so critical, and the brain's transferring information from that term storage into the hippocampus, where it's more long-term memory networks, right? And at the same time, it's during this sleep time that the lymphatic system turns on. And this is pretty cool, because this is where now you're clearing these metabolic waste products that accumulate during the waking hours, that from the brain. So with this so important, so many people feel trapped, especially again in our society today. So many people feel trapped in a cycle where stress is disrupting their sleep. They can't get to sleep, and poor sleep increases then the stress.
Mm-hmm.
What is happening neurologically in that cycle, and what can somebody do to break that point?
Yeah, well, neurologically, you're not allowing the brain to rest and repair and detox. So, eventually everything starts slowing down. You have less focus, your memory's bad, you feel groggy during the day. And so what happens is function shuts down, right? You start leaving the prefrontal cortex of the brain, and now you're somewhere else. You're not really present, you're not really functional. And eventually that starts affecting the health of the entire body, because the entire body needs that rest period to repair. Now, if we're stuck in that, there's a lot of things you can do. I think one of the big things we're actually going to talk about next is just getting back to the natural rhythms of life and getting into nature, getting our body set to the concept of it's nighttime, right? Lights out means lights out. Otherwise, we really start staying up too late. And I think a lot of this is the overuse, again, of the phones and the iPads and the computer, so that we're late at night. So simple method is everything goes off a half hour before your bedtime. So step one, set a bedtime. Okay, let's say I'm going to go to bed at 9. Oh, it's probably not realistic, but it might be realistic for me. But let's say 10. I'm going to go to bed at 10 o'clock. Okay, half hour before 10, or maybe even an hour before, everything gets turned off. I'm not going to look at my phone anymore. I'm not going to look at the iPad anymore. We're going to turn those things off. We're going to put them in a different room. We're going to get our pajamas on, and we're going to just start resting. We're going to start winding down. We're not going to start any new events or tasks. Maybe you are using your blue blocking glasses in the evening. And so you're starting to get the body back into that cycle of, oh, it's time to rest now. I'm not doing all this stuff. I think that's a good cycle for people just to get in. If you just set that intention of setting a time and then turning off and getting off of all your devices and stuff, at least a half hour before sleep. That means no food too. There are a small amount of people who actually do better sometimes if they eat right before bed, but usually that is not the average. Usually most people, it's better if you're not eating a half an hour before bed, maybe not drinking a half an hour before bed, so you're not running to the bathroom in the middle of the night trying to pee, so you're not disturbing your sleep cycles. But it's just that very simple intention. Set a time and then stop doing all those things at least a half hour before bed, and then see how much easier it is to actually get to sleep. And then that leads us to this next one, light in nature. So morning sunlight sets this circadian rhythm for better sleep and focus. So actually, sunlight helps your body make melatonin and serotonin. And then when the sun goes down in the evening and night comes upon us, the body starts releasing the melatonin, and it's supposed to suppress the serotonin. Okay. So the serotonin, so these rhythms are going back and forth. And that's why we want at least a half hour before bed, get off your devices, because that blue light will continue to stimulate the serotonin. And so now the melatonin is not being released. Well, if you're always stimulating it, it's going to be very hard to get to bed because the melatonin is what helps you sleep. And it's naturally produced melatonin. You don't want to just be dependent on taking melatonin. So if we're not turning those things off 30 minutes or an hour before bed, it's very hard for the circadian rhythms to actually kick in. Time in nature reduces the medulla activity, the medulla oblongata activity, and mental fatigue. Forest bathing, I love being in the forest, measurably lowers stress hormones. And blue light limitation in the evenings protects the melatonin, which I just explained. Now, examples, everyone's different, but just the idea, getting outside, getting sunlight. Some people like to be on the beach. Some people like the forest. Some people like to be in the mountains. Using blue blocking glasses to reduce the blue light. I don't mind the beach. The beach is nice, but I'm kind of like a mountain forest guy. I'm really happy when I'm in the forest and the mountains, but I do love the beach too. But all these things have really common denominators, and that is we're enjoying nature. We're getting the natural sunlight. Number two, we have the fresh air, we have movement, we have the colors and sounds of nature, which I'm calling the cycles of life. We underestimate how much power the sound and color from nature have on us. There's so much science out there, and we don't know all the science about how it affects us as humans necessarily, but we know that birds have specific sounds which help the plants, and then the plants help the animals, and there's colors involved. All that stuff is taking place around us all the time. We take it for nature, or we take it for granted, but it's a very powerful thing. And I think anyone who's experienced this and gone on a vacation knows when you get to the beach and you're walking in the sand, it just feels good. You're just, I'm like, all of a sudden your body just let go. Maybe it's the forest, maybe it's the mountains for you, but you just feel those cycles of life kicking in. And there's something about being in nature that we just can't quite explain because we just don't know all the effects it's having. We know some of them, but I think there's so many we don't have any clue about. And then, of course, there's the grounding, where you can be in your bare feet, you can be grounding to the earth. That's the idea. And so just like an electrical circuit, we have polarities in our body. You have a negative, you have a positive, and your feet grounded to the earth, just like an electrical circuit. So everything in the body works based on these opposing forces of magnetism and electromagnetism, even our bodies. And of course, all that stuff is naturally found in nature. So very good to get in nature. And all those rhythms are going to really help nourish the brain, all the different colors and sounds. Next is nutrition. Well, we could be here all day just on this slide, but to keep it short, I just tried to pull out some of the major things you want to think of when it comes to brain nutrition. Number one, the fatty acids, omega-3s, so your DHA, your EPA, and how they help with building neurons in the brain and the neural membranes. Antioxidants, often found in berries. That's not the only place. You can find antioxidants a lot of places. Help reduce oxidative brain stress. Very important, especially if you want to keep your inflammation down. Fermented foods support the gut-brain axis. You can find a lot of fermented foods with Azure Standard and AzureWell. We have a lot of fermented whole food supplements. Even mild dehydration impairs cognition or concentration and recall. So what do we want to do with the examples here? Well, we want to learn how to eat whole foods. Not out of a can, not out of a box, real whole foods. Learn what foods you can't, drink water, and then add the supplements to get what you can from food. So your key takeaways here: get your nutrition from food first, and drink, good filtered clean water. Remove your stressors. Find out what foods your body doesn't like. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that. There's a lot of different types of testing that you can have done to find out what your intolerances are, what sensitivities, allergies you might have. Or you can just do the old diary and like a journal with elimination. You do elimination of all the different types of foods, and you slowly start working one food type back into your diet at a time, and you journal how you feel. And that takes a little bit longer that way, but you might be able then to identify what food causes problems to the body. If you take dairy out of your diet for a little while, and you probably want to keep it out for a little while, and then you put dairy back in and you notice you're bloated and gassy, guess what? Good indication that that's probably a stressor on your body. And so if you continually put a stressor in your body, you're going to continue the process of oxidative stress and inflammation. You don't want that. So learn to understand your body and what your body likes and doesn't like. And that's why I'm not a big proponent of a certain diet, because it's like, well, it's really an individual thing. You need to find out what foods don't work for you. What one diet that might work for one person might not work for you. You really have to find out what your body likes and what it doesn't like. And those things can change. Sometimes the body changes. And then the third step after you do all these things is then you take the whole food supplements to get back into the body what you're not able to get from the food and from our water anymore, because everything has been depleted in the soils. So until we get the soils back to where they're supposed to be, unfortunately, we often need the supplements. And we definitely want to encourage that they are whole food supplements, which is why this is AzureWell specializes in the whole food supplements, not something synthetic. So it's like eating food, just a little bit removed. That's Nourish. Last one, well, this is not, there's one more after herbs, but this one is herbs and adaptogens. So there's a lot of different things. Lion's mane mushrooms stimulate nerve growth factor. Bacopa has centuries of use for memory. You have ashwagandha. I think most people know about that one. That's an adaptogen. Hormones, damage recall. Ginkgo. A lot of people know about ginkgo for memory. It improves the blood flow. Here are some examples, especially from the AzureWell line. We have the adrenaline adaptogen. We have the racing mind. And then there's other herbs and adaptogens mentioned above. You can find a lot of products or supplements in the AzureWell line that have some of these ingredients in them, or standalone ingredients. Now, herbs are very powerful, but they need to be used correctly. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's always safe. Herbs are a powerful thing, and you do want to use it correctly. The most important thing I think people can learn about herbs is just how to use them in a natural way, meaning a way that does not suppress the body. Because we don't want to use herbs just for suppression of your symptoms, because then you kind of get into the allopathic model. Now, most of the time, most of the herbs you're going to buy, especially if it's from like AzureWell and stuff, you're not really going to find anything dangerous there that, you're going to hurt yourself. But they're not always necessarily the first thing you jump to. A lot of times you just want to jump to your 90 essential nutrients and the things the body really needs. Now, out of herbals, one of the great things to jump to is number 2 is your adaptogens. And that's because they don't force the body, but they encourage the body to balance itself out. If something needs raised or lowered, the adaptogen is working with the body. And so what's important to remember is it's not the herb, it's not actually the adaptogen, it's not any of the supplements that are doing anything, it's your body. Your body is the healer, your body is what's doing the repairs. We're just giving it the proper fuel and resources it needs from nature, and then the body knows what to do with it. And that's what's great with adaptogen herbs is they work along with the body's innate wisdom, and the body just kind of knows how to use them correctly to balance itself out. Oh, maybe that was the last category, was the herbs and adaptogens. So the last part of the presentation is just the AzureWell supplements. So these are your basic nutritional support for brain and memory. Up front, right there, the first three obviously are your basic nutrition for the brain. You got the core copper, the whole food multi, the Alaskan liver oil. Now, of course, with the whole food multi currently, you would not need core copper by itself, because the current whole food multi has 4 milligrams of whole food copper in there. And then you have the Alaskan cod liver oil. So that's 2 out of the 4 products for the 90 essential nutrients. Very important for the brain. We also have, oh, look at this, fermented. Look at that, fermented CoQ10 plus, great brain support, mitochondria support, antioxidants. You know, the brain is another area of the body that requires a lot of energy. Actually, not more than nutrition or digestion. Digestion actually uses more energy than even the brain, but I think brain might be number 2. It's either heart or brain. It's the second most utilizer of energy. And so if we don't have that good mitochondrial support, we just don't have the energy. And then another option is the PQQ with CoQ10. And all these things are going to help with the antioxidants and the circulation and blood flow. And then we have activated B complex. And that's a particular one I like. It has a really great methylation support. And methylation support, we typically think of liver, but I don't think we should be thinking of liver at only, because a lot of methylation functions are part of the brain functions, or what we call the neurotransmitter cycle of methylation. Whether or not that concept is completely accurate on whether or not there's neurotransmitters in the chemistry of the brain like we've been classically taught is a whole nother question. But there's no doubt that that level of methylation has a very powerful effect on the brain. And I think it has a lot more to do with nutrition than what we think. And so the B vitamins are very important for brain function, for memory, for circulation, and for that methylation. The next slide is basic brain supplements. So now we're not just talking about the basic nutrition, but actually supplements that can help different areas of brain function. The first one is advanced eye support. I think a month or 2 back, we had a whole AzureWell podcast on the eyes. And one of the things to remember is sight. A lot of the sight and vision is actually part of the brain function. It's not just the eyeball. The eyeball is more like the lens and the optical part that's doing this, the sensory, allowing the information in, but a lot of that processing and the ability to see is actually occurring in the brain. So this formula with the different herbs in it are going to help the eye support and the brain support, photoreceptors, all kinds of things to do with the brain function. And of course, oxidative stress support. So that's a powerhouse. But when you see that, I don't want you to just think eyes. Whenever I think of eyes, I'm thinking of eyes and brain together. Racing mind relief with Mag-M. So here's a great one for the overactive mind. We can't fall asleep. The mind's going. We need the body to relax. We need the brain to kind of like shut down here and go to sleep. Here's another one you can do. So now you can set your time. You can turn all your stuff off a half an hour before. Take racing mind relief and get some good sleep. Nerve support. This one is more related to the integrity of nerve function. And of course, there's tons of nerves in the brain, and they have to make their connections. And you have the whole functions with the neurotransmitters, the membrane integrity. This one has a lot of the phospholipids in there, really powerful for nerve functioning and brain support. And so that's going to help really all functions of thinking, memory, function of the brain, because those nerves wiring and firing together. Brain support, obviously, as it sounds, this is a formula really made for the brain. The lipid membrane support, it helps the brain functions. It has that alpha GPC, which is going to help with your learning and attention span and memory and being focused and present. And then we have the quick and bright thinker support. So that one's a little bit more focused for memory. It does have great cognitive support in there, learning and attention. You'll notice this one helps the BDNF again, that brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So this one really good for the cognitive functions in the memory. So that's what we have. That's what AzureWell has for supplements for the brain and memory. And that's about it, folks.
Thank you, Dr. Monzo. You know, I would say for those of you that feel a little bit overwhelmed where to start, what product to start with, you know, I would say that there are probably 2 or 3 here, but at least 2 that are no-brainers, pun intended, that really, and you probably know if you've watched previous podcasts with us, you probably know which ones I'm going to be referring to. First, and if you do anything outside of this, you're kind of just swimming against the current here. And so first and foremost, I would have to say the Alaskan cod fish oil. We need to support the body with proper antioxidant literature. We need to support the body with that encouraging that mitochondrial health when we're talking about the brain. And we need to support the cell membrane fluidity. These are the 3 most important components when we're talking about the brain. And certainly, Dr. Monzo, it goes without saying, the 8 pillars that you do and you exercise on a regular basis. But DHA, we need to understand the brain is approximately, 60% fat? And I think 30 to 40% of that fat is docosahexaenoic acid, and making a part of the brain's gray matter. And so it's a structural component of the brain. If you don't have it, you don't have that structure. It's critical to the neuronal membranes. So cod liver oil is critical to the membrane fluidity and that proper neurotransmitter signaling. It's critical to that synaptic part of the nerve ending for those nerves, that it's the media in which the nerves are firing back and forth on at the gap junction of the cell. It involves so many critical roles in supporting not just the brain, but every one of your 1 trillion+ cells in your body. So I have to say, first and foremost, you got to get cod liver oil into the brain. And you know, this is yes, there's the 90 essential nutrients, and those are foundational. These are all foundational components, a lot of which if you just incorporate, you're going to find yourself now on the offense. So what do you do if you feel like you've been struggling, or you've had some sort of free radical pathology from some sort of trauma to the brain, or just over the years, you're finding that you need some support? I think right away, one of the most overlooked players here in supporting new mitochondria, or what they call scientifically is mitochondrial biogenesis. It's the formation of new mitochondria in the brain, and that's PQQ. It's one of the few nutrients studied that has the ability to actually support mitochondrial biogenesis. And so you're going to find that it's going to renew the mitochondria. It's going to support that cellular energy production. It's when the cell goes into a low cell energy state, that's when apoptosis takes place. It's a preventive mechanism for the body. So the last thing you want to do is have the body self-destruct because it's at low cell energy. So we want to do everything that we can to support healthy cell energy production. That's what's going to help detoxification, along with the cod liver oil, of course, but and help maintain that neuronal resilience under oxidative stress. So you can get that performance that you're looking for. And with this particular PQQ is the coenzyme Q10 to help it just work better. And it's not shortened in length. It is the full tail of the coenzyme Q10. So it's going to be able to, it's stabilized. So it's going to be able to fully function with PQQ. So those are the two primary players that I would say where you can start. And if you're experiencing if you're the elderly and you need that support because you're experiencing that brain fog, I would look into the PQQ strategically. If you're feeling that anxiety where you just can't fall asleep, and we drilled home why sleep is so important, get the racing mind relief. That's going to help regulate those NMDA receptors, preventing that those excitotoxins, that excessive neuronal excitation that is occurring within the brain. So it's going to calm that runaway neurotransmitter response. It's going to help balance it again. That racing mind relief is a beautiful product. Again, you can take this not just at night to help you fall asleep, but you can take this first thing in the morning, and it's going to help you throughout the day as well. So it's going to help relax the body and regulate your body's stress response throughout the day. So I wanted just to go over those three key players for you. Dr. Monzo, thank you so much. One thing that I did learn today, and I think the message to drive home is exercise. Exercise grows the brain, right? It's not just like the heart needs movement and the body needs nourishment. The brain has specific requirements to function at its best. And Dr. Monzo walked us through those 8 pillars. Go back and review them. Understand if you need support for memory, focus, learning capacity, and just long-term brain health. These areas are what's going to help you. Exercising is what's going to grow the brain. That's and that's really why sleep is so important as well, because it's going to help rest it while you're growing it. So Dr. Monzo, this is phenomenal. I think this is a lot of great information that it's going to be very useful and practical to a lot of people. And it's beyond just targeted nutrition, right? It's identifying with all the critical healing components, the healing hierarchy of the body beyond just supplements themselves. I'll be the first to tell you that supplements is only about 30% of it. Mm-hmm. I'm a supplement guy. Supplements is about 30% of it. So if all you do is supplements, last time I checked, 30% was a failing grade. It ain't going to work. Yeah. Right. You got to understand the vitalistic model, as Dr. Monzo was describing. And if you want to learn more about that, certainly get a hold of him, get a hold of one of our referral practitioners. If you go on to our AzureLivingWell.com, you'll be able to find our referral section of all of our referral practitioners. You'll see that we have a number of naturopaths that are vitalistic naturopaths. They are not utilizing nutrition in a functional way. They are healing the body literally from the ground up. And so that's what it means to be a vitalistic naturopath, as Dr. Monzo is. And we highly recommend those naturopaths that take that vitalistic approach. It's a whole body phenomena, right? So Dr. Monzo, thank you for representing this in its entirety, as a vitalistic model. We so appreciate you and everything that you do for us. If you have any questions, get a hold of Dr. Monzo. He's there to help you. That's what our community is for. So until next time, guys, thank you for hanging out with us, and can't wait to see you next time. Bye for now.